Milo's phone rings. It's the call everyone dreads, the kind of news that's supposed to break you a little. And he takes it in, says the right words, hangs up and feels nothing. Not calm, not strong, just blank. Like someone muted the part of him that should be reacting right now. He waits for the wave to hit. It doesn't come. And what follows isn't grief. It's confusion about why grief hasn't shown up yet. Here's what nobody tells you about feeling nothing at moments that are supposed to hurt. It's not coldness, and it's definitely not a sign that you don't care. There's a very specific protective mechanism running the show in moments like this, and once you understand what it's actually doing, that unsettling blankness stops looking like a personal failure and starts looking like exactly what it is. Let's start with what emotion is actually built for. Feelings aren't decoration, they're information. Signals meant to help you respond appropriately to what's happening. But information only gets processed if the system receiving it has enough bandwidth to handle it. Psychologists describe intense emotional numbness in moments of high stress as dissociative detachment, a temporary disconnect between an event and the emotional response that would normally accompany it. And it isn't random. It tends to show up specifically when the brain judges that the full emotional weight of something would be too much to process safely, right now, in this moment. Here's the part that explains why the timing feels so strange: numbness during the exact moment everyone expects tears, followed sometimes by an overwhelming wave days or even weeks later, triggered by something completely unrelated. Researchers studying acute stress responses describe this as delayed affect, where the nervous system essentially postpones the emotional processing of an event until conditions feel safer to actually feel it. Your body isn't malfunctioning by withholding the feeling. It's making a judgment call, often correctly, that right now, mid-crisis, with decisions to make and people relying on you, isn't the moment it can afford to fall apart. But wait, there's a deeper mechanism here worth understanding, and it explains why some people experience this far more than others. There's a concept called window of tolerance, the psychological zone in which a person can feel strong emotion without becoming overwhelmed or shutting down. For most people, that window is wide enough to handle a difficult moment without going numb. But for people who've experienced repeated high-stress situations, especially earlier in life, that window often narrows over time. The nervous system learns through repetition that big emotions in real time can be destabilizing rather than useful, and starts automatically rooting around them the moment intensity crosses a certain threshold. Numbness in that context isn't a flaw. It's a defense that got built for good reason and never got the memo that the danger has mostly passed. There's also something worth naming about people who function unusually well during actual emergencies. The ones everyone turns to in a crisis because they stay calm and get things done. Psychologists sometimes call this functional dissociation, a temporary narrowing of emotional bandwidth that allows someone to keep operating, making calls, handling logistics, holding a family together, precisely because their feelings have been set aside rather than processed. It's genuinely useful in the short term. The complication comes later, because the emotion that got postponed doesn't just disappear, it waits. Here's something that explains the confusion and even guilt that often follows. People frequently interpret their own numbness as proof that they didn't love the person, didn't care about the outcome, or are somehow broken. But affect and attachment aren't the same system. You can be deeply attached to someone and still experience a complete absence of felt emotion in the immediate aftermath of losing them. The brain's protective circuitry doesn't check in with how much you cared before deciding whether to let the feeling through right now. It's making a much more basic calculation about whether you can currently handle what it's about to unleash. This also connects to something researchers call emotional deferral, a pattern where numbness in the moment often gets followed by grief that surfaces sideways, triggered by something small and seemingly unrelated. A song, a smell, an empty chair at a table weeks later. That delayed wave isn't a sign that something's wrong with the timing. It's often simply the moment the nervous system finally judged it safe enough to open the door it had been holding shut. Now here's something that might completely reframe this pattern. People who go numb during moments that are supposed to be devastating are very often not detached people at all. They're frequently the ones who feel things most intensely, which is precisely why their system reaches for a circuit breaker in the first place. A nervous system doesn't bother protecting you from feelings that were never going to be overwhelming to begin with. The numbness is, in its own strange way, evidence of how much was actually at stake underneath it. Here's the part worth saying clearly, because a lot of people carry real shame about this, without understanding what actually happened. Feeling nothing in a moment that was supposed to break you doesn't mean you're cold, unfeeling, or somehow less human than people who cried immediately. It usually means your nervous system made a judgment call to protect you from more than you could process in that exact moment. And it's still your job later in your own time to let that feeling finally land. The goal was never to force the emotion to show up on schedule. It's trusting that its absence in the moment isn't proof it was never there, and staying gentle with yourself in the days that follow, because the feeling you're waiting for is very often already on its way. If you've ever felt strangely blank in a moment, everyone expected you to break down, hit subscribe, and if you want to understand why some people can't relax on vacation even when nothing's actually wrong, that video is going to explain more than you expect. Click it. This video touches on emotional numbness and grief. If you're personally struggling with these feelings, it can help to talk with a mental health professional or someone you trust.